Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Navis Nobilite. I am Captain Zelnick, and I have survived the holidays. That's right, even I have to deal with in-laws during the winter months. Now, I want to give you all a quick update on what's going on with the channel. Yes, I am going to be making a lot more content this year. I've dedicated myself to making as much more content as I possibly can. I'm going to be starting a new fan project here in the Navis Nobilite servers, so if you want to be a part of that, come and join us. We're going to be making the third Book of the Void here. It's going to be great. And if you have a great idea for a ship or a fleet or something that would be really, really cool within the realm of space combat in the 41st millennium, come to the Navis Nobilite servers and we can get started and get things rolling. Now, also another important update. The Vassal engine module is going to be getting an update soon. It's not quite ready, but it's going to have things like more Sisters of Battleships, more AdMech stuff. A bunch of new stuff is going to be added. It's going to be amazing. Now, what is this video all about? Oh, one very important point that I wanted to bring up. The reason why you haven't seen any of the campaign videos that we've been doing in the Navis Nobilite server is because we had to restart the campaign, and as it turns out, it's really hard to be there for every match to record the match. So if you want to be part of the campaign, you're gonna have to come to the server and join it. Now, we've only just about finished the very first round of the campaign. We're going on to round 2 here next week. It's going really well, and we have a really, really great campaign manager. Bianc, you're doing a great job. I want everyone to thank Bianc if you see him. He's doing excellently. We've also managed to identify a couple of vagaries in the campaign rules that kind of need to be addressed. I'll probably be talking with people about fixing those in the future. But one way or another, what is this video about? Well, I promised you all that I would start going through the Book of the Void 1, the Discordia incident, and talking about the ships, the fleets, and the philosophy behind making these fleets and how they work. Now, Book of the Void 1 begins with the Sisters of Battle. Now, there is a very important reason why I decided that the Sisters of Battle needed to be in this book, and that's because the Sisters of Battle, when this book was being made, were just being renewed. All of their cool stuff was coming out. Well, they had been renewed a couple of years ago. They were getting a series of new stuff, and a lot of people were talking about giving them their own fleet. Their new book actually mentions that they had a fleet of their own. They had these things like Fraterus Templar battleships, which admittedly in finest Games Workshop fashion violated the lore because the Fraterus Templar aren't supposed to exist anymore in any sort of meaningful way. But I figure it's a little bit hard to demand of an individual who owns a battleship to give it up. So, what was the philosophy behind building the Adepta Sororitas fleet? Well, obviously, because they're an Ordo Militant, they're going to be utilized in similar ways to the Space Marines, and because they are restricted in many regards in their military capacity, the whole Age of Apostasy thing happened, they are going to be a fleet very reminiscent to Space Marines. So they are described as having not only their own strike cruisers, but their own cruisers that is actually drawn out from all sorts of lore. And some of this is purely the creation of myself and a few others. So, moving on to the fleet rules. Sisters of Holy Fire. The vessels of the Adepta Sororitas gain the following bonuses. +1 to boarding rolls. Now, the reason why it's only +1 and +2 is because they're not Space Marines. They're better than normal humans. They have power armor. They're still not Space Marines. Worry not, they have benefits elsewhere. By the way, I'm drinking tea, so if you hear an occasional slurp, you have my sincerest apologies. Next one, +1 to hit and run attacks, including assault boats launched from Sororitas vessels. This does not include a -1 from an enemy incoming hit and run attacks. So they have the benefit of the Space Marines on the attack, but not on the defense. Again, they're equipped with power armor, but they're not Space Marines. Adeptus Sororitas vessels are equipped exclusively with Melta torpedoes and will never run out of ammunition for them. This is the super weapon, so to speak, of the Adeptus Sororitas fleet. Melta torpedoes everywhere. If there is a torpedo and it's a Sororitas vessel, it's gonna be Melta. You're gonna be causing fires all over the place. If a critical hit is caused by this vessel during a boarding action, you may choose to automatically inflict a fire result instead of rolling. This is important for the next rule. If a hit and run attack, oh, actually, not for this one, but in the end, fire is always good. But if a hit and run attack causes a fire critical hit, the enemy ship suffers -1 LD until the fire is repaired. The penalty does not stack should multiple fires be inflicted, but all fire critical hits must be repaired to remove the penalty. So, obviously, you want this to cause as many hit and run critical hit fires as you can, though I will likely consider changing this just to all critical hits and all fires. Just because the fleet needs a little something extra, and this may be what I'm looking for. The next special rule, Saint of the Holy Emperor. The presence of a living saint of the Emperor has a powerful effect on the minds who witness their lambent glory. The unique connection to the Emperor of mankind can bolster the hearts of even the most terrified rating, pushing them to heroic deeds far beyond what one would expect. When the battle turns ill, the living saint can use the connection to the Emperor to turn the tides of battle, calling forth the will of the immortal Emperor that defends all of mankind. One vessel has a holy saint of the Emperor akin to Lord Solar Macarius or Saint Celestine. While they do not command the vessel, their presence is inspirational to the entire crew of the vessel, conveying a +2 leadership to the vessel, to a maximum of 10. Once per game, during the owning player's movement phase, they may choose to activate the living saint. The will of the Emperor's word is their own, and may not be what their commander expects. Roll on the following table. 1. Fear of the Golden Light. The nearest enemy capital ship to the ship the Saint is on suffers bridge smashed. Ain't that nice? 2. The Emperor Protects. Pick a friendly vessel. This vessel ignores all critical hits until the owner's next movement phase. Just no critical hits can be applied to this ship. Aloft on Holy Wings. Pick a friendly vessel. This vessel adds 10 centimeters to its next movement and may turn one additional time at the end of its movement. Notice how this has no penalties to firing. Follow the word of the Emperor. All friendly vessels automatically pass all leadership checks this round. Very handy for a carrier fleet, which this is. Smite the Non-Believer. The vessel with the Saint gains a left column shift to all battery and battery-like weapons in its next shooting phase. This includes bombardment cannons. And finally, Storm of the Emperor's Wrath. Place a 5 centimeter by 5 centimeter warp rift wherever you desire and scatter at 46. Now, a lot of you are thinking, it's random. It may be useful, it may be not. I have had somebody nearly turn the entire tide of battle in the campaign that we are just playing and caused me to nearly lose one of my carrier ships because they got Aloft on Holy Wings, literally did a Tokyo drift with a Sisters of Battle strike cruiser and dump a set of 6 Melta torpedoes into it, completely unexpectedly. So do not underestimate any of these effects. Yeah, there may be circumstances where they won't be helpful at the time, but generally speaking, all of these will be helpful most of the time. Influence of the Inquisition. The Adeptus Sororitas fleet may select vessels from the Imperial Navy as reserves at a rate of 2 cruisers for 1 Imperial Navy standard cruiser. So just normal cruisers, no battle cruisers. No light cruisers. So basically, no light cruisers, battle cruisers, or grand cruisers may be selected. Straight up, bog standard cruisers. Next, leadership. Unbreakable faith. Adeptus Sororitas vessels roll for leadership on the following table rather than the standard leadership table. 1 is a 6, 2 through 3 is a 7, 4 through 5 is an 8, and 6 is 9. Adeptus Sororitas in campaigns, they have an attack rating of 2. Now, on to the battleships. Now, the Adeptus Sororitas fleet has access to a number of battleships. They can take a Retribution, they can take an Emperor, they can take, if I scroll all the way down here, I think it's just the Retribution and the Emperor. No, they can take an Oberon as well. The only one that has specific rules for the Sisters of Battle is the Carmina Indomitus at 425 points. The creation of this vessel was, for the most part, done by myself in the conceptual story basis, which I think does fit in with the lore enough. There are multiple situations where people have gone requisitioned or taken over battleships, but not in name only, mostly to avoid scrutiny from the Administratum or the Imperial Navy. And I figured that the Sisters of Battle would have really no problem, quote unquote, helping the command of an Imperial Navy ship. And as described here in its lore, the captain of the vessel is still there, just a hereditary position. Ultimately, it's commanded by a canoness who takes up the noble position of second in command. Ultimately, the Sisters of Battle took it away, heavily modified it with a bunch of technology that they probably shouldn't have, and are using it effectively as the flagship of the Order of the Bloody Rose. When it comes to its actual stats, it's your standard issue battleship with 12 hits, 20 centimeter speed, so faster than average, 45-degree turns, 4 shields, 6 up prow armor, 5 up side and rear, and 5 turrets. The weapons that it is equipped with are port and starboard pyros melta batteries at 45 centimeters at strength 10, port and starboard launch bays of 2 squadrons of either Furies or Shark assault boats, a strength 8 dorsal bombardment cannon, and a strength 8 prow melta torpedo battery. The special rules of the Pyros Melta batteries. The weapons are of an ancient pre-heresy design utilizing a specialized melta charge. When rolling for damage against the enemy ship within 15 centimeters, subtract 1 from their armor value. Ergo, a 5-up armor is treated like a 4-up armor. Furthermore, when a critical hit is rolled, you may forego rolling on the critical hit table and cause a fire critical hit, if you so desire. Remember, it's may. You may forego. Seraphim Squads. The vessel also has +1 in boarding actions on top of the additional +1 for simply being a Sisters of Battle ship. The next vessel, there is no current model for because it's really meant to be made by the player. Now, there are some guidelines that are given, and ideally we may see something coming out of Soulforge Studios to fill in these blanks. When these were designed, we didn't have the time or resources ultimately to make them. So that's really why these things have giant data fragment missings on them. Hopefully, when this is filled in by somebody who can make a ship, these will be replaced with actual images. So, Sanctum Grand Cruiser. This vessel was really meant to be basically a trimmed down Carmina. It was meant to be what happens if the Sisters of Battle got their hands on a repulsive Grand Cruiser and then made it their own. So the Sanctum at 235 points base comes equipped with port weapons batteries and starboard weapons batteries at strength 6 at 45, a strength 6 dorsal bombardment cannon, and a strength 6 prow melta torpedo. It's a cruiser with 10 hits, 20 centimeter speed, 45-degree turns, 3 shields, 5 up armor, and 4 turrets. Now, you select one of the weapon options from below, normally. Either port and starboard weapons batteries at strength 6, bringing your firepower up to 12 within 30, and to only 6 out 45. But you have a better port and starboard firepower to look forward to. Or you can take a launch capacity 4. So 2 squadrons on each out of each side. Now, a Sanctum-class cruiser may take one of the following. Basically, weapons batteries are 20 points, launch bays are 40 points. You may take Seraphim squads to get an additional +1 to boarding for 10 points, and it has the Vessel of the Saint rule. If a Saint of the Emperor is embarked on the vessel, you may select a second weapons option, but the points must be sent to do so. A vessel may not purchase the same weapon option twice. Effectively, you can purchase both of these. Now, it makes this an extraordinarily expensive vessel, but it also makes it a very flexible vessel. It allows you to do a lot more with a Grand Cruiser hull. The Vessel of the Saint rule is really trying to push you to put your Saint onto one of these vessels. Now, onto the Abbey. The Abbey is a modified Vengeance Grand Cruiser. Starting at 200 points, it has, again, very similar stats: 10 hits, 20 centimeter speed, 45 turns, 3 shields, 5 up armor, and 4 turrets. It comes standard, with firepower 10, 45 centimeter weapon batteries left and right, and you select one option from below. Port and starboard weapons batteries at strength 6 at 30 centimeters. Port and starboard bombardment cannon, strength 4 at 30 centimeters, or launch capacity for launch bays, so 2 out each side. The points for weapons batteries are 20, bombardment cannons are 30, and launch bays are 40. It can also take a Seraphim squad. It may also take a power ram and a 6-up prow for 10 additional points, setting it apart from pretty much every other Vengeance variety out there. But it's a power ram, which is always good, and a 6-up prow on a Grand Cruiser. Nothing wrong with that, but it's 10 points. It's expensive. Now, also, again, like the Sanctum, it is a Vessel of the Saint, and if it takes a Saint of the Emperor, you may purchase 2 of these options. You may only, of course, you have to spend it on 2 different ones. You can't double up, but that still either turns it into a supremely powerful gunship or a very, very flexible carrier. Now, moving on. Now, the Chalice battle cruiser actually persisted in content before this book. This existed in the Battlefleet Cronus, I believe, for Rogue Trader, though I may be wrong. It was in another content book. But starting at 230 points, what are you getting? You're getting an 8-hit cruiser with a standard 20 centimeter speed, 45-degree turns, 2 shields, 6-up prow, 5-up rear and side, and 3 turrets. It has port weapons batteries and starboard weapons batteries at 45 centimeters, strength 10 left and right. It has a dorsal bombardment cannon at strength 4, and it has prow melta torpedoes at strength 6. Its special rules: it has enhanced engines. It rolls 5d6 on all ahead full. It also has delicate plasma drives. If this vessel receives a thruster damage or an engine room damage critical hit, it'll additionally suffer a fire critical hit as well. Now, the purpose of this vessel, a lot of people kind of look at this and go, why would I want to take this? In reality, what it's there for is a really, really fast, for Imperial Navy, vessel that can move a huge amount of distance in a single round and then dump melta torpedoes into a target. In a normal fleet, you can take 2 of these things. By taking 2 of them, you can squadron them, they go the same speed, and you can dump a strength 12 melta torpedo salvo into it. And also, this vessel is a lot tougher than your standard strike cruiser, despite having, 5-up armor in the rear and sides, but it has 8 hits and 2 shields. So taking 2 of these battle cruisers will actually form a powerful linchpin in your fleet, and it's a source of good range weapons batteries when you're dealing with, pesky little Eldar. So that is the Chalice. Now, on to the strike cruisers. Now, the Sisters of Battle have 2 versions of strike cruiser in their fleet. They have the Chapel and the Priory. Now, their stats are, for the most part, the same. In fact, they are entirely the same up top. 6-hit cruiser, 25 centimeter speed, 90-degree turns, 1 shield, armor 6-up, turrets 3. Now, you're going to notice that all of these ships have more turrets than average than all their contemporaries. That is because these constitute the bolter of the trifecta of the Holy Trinity of the Sisters of Battle, which are Bolter, Flamer, we already figured out the Flamer, and the Melta. So, fire, Melta attacks, and lots of turrets. The Chapel is your source of Melta torpedoes. It's a pretty standard equipped Sisters of Battle vessel. a strike cruiser vessel, 4 weapons batteries off to each side, strength 3 bombardment cannon, and a strength 6 melta torpedo at 150 points. You are paying a bit of a premium. You can also purchase an additional shield for 15 additional points, but you're paying that premium mostly for the additional turret and the access to melta torpedoes. The Priory is a little bit different. The Priory is your dedicated carrier and is very powerful for its size. Now, it has the same stats as the Chapel up top, and it has the same weapons batteries and dorsal bombardment cannon, but instead of the Prow Melta Torpedo, it has a Strength 4 launch bay, which is bigger than pretty much anything else of its weight class. The other vessels that have a launch bay on a light cruiser chassis would be the Strike Cruiser, which has roughly the same. I wouldn't necessarily call it equal because I would rather have 4 fighters and four assault boats instead of 2 Thunderhawks. So it's a little bit better in that regard. It's more flexible. And the other one would be the Defiant, which only has launch capacity 2. And of course, it can purchase an additional shield for 15 points. But again, you're paying for the benefit of the premium here. You're paying that premium for the benefit of what's a really nice little strike cruiser. So those are all of the vessels of the Sisters of Battle. Now onto their fleet list. So the Sisters of Battle fleet list works very similarly to your standard Imperial template. You have a fleet commander. It is your canoness. You may purchase 0 to 1 of them. Obviously, if it's above 750 points, you must include a canoness. And canoness come standard leadership 9. They come with 1 fleet reroll and purchase a second one for 25 points. They may take secondary commanders as well. They can either take a Living Saint, which must be placed on a ship of cruiser size or above. It can go on any cruiser size or above. So if you have a Fraterus Templar battleship, if you have a Carmina Indomitus, you can even put it on a Chalice or a Sanctum or an Abbey. Well, you'd preferably put it on the Sanctum or the Abbey because you get special benefits for it, but you can also put them on strike cruisers. Now, the other things you can take are Dialogus Ministries. Dialogus Ministries may be placed on a ship or squadron and convey a single reroll to that ship or squadron, which means these can be placed on escorts. So bear that in mind. You can take only up to 2 of them. Oh, one more thing about the Living Saint. It's 100 points for a +2 leadership to wherever it goes. You may not want to put it where your canoness is because you already have a super good leadership here. But also, this 100 points is actually technically undercosted for the benefits that the Living Saint brings. However, you're basically paying for it elsewhere because it becomes a very expensive ship. So even if it's 100 points, you're getting a lot out of the Living Saint. Now, on to what you're allowed to take. Cathedral vessels. Cathedral vessels, the largest ships of the fleet. You may take 1 cathedral vessel for every 750 points of the fleet. The Carmina Indomitus can only be taken in fleets of 1,500 points or more, which means 1,500 points or more. So get that 1,500 points going. These vessels can be selected from the following list. You may take 0-1 Fraterus Templar battleships. Fraterus Templar battleships are not Sisters of Battle. They are Fraterus Templar. If you want to know where I get this piece of lore, it's right there in the Sisters of Battle Codex. Right there in their fleet makeup, it mentions Fraterus Templar battleships. So stop coming at me saying that those don't exist. They do in the Codex. That may not occur in the future, but it was really advantageous that they were there because it filled in a problem with larger scale ships for the Adeptus Sororitas. Now, you have the option of the Retribution, the Emperor, and the Oberon. They do not have any of the special rules of the Adeptus Sororitas, unless, of course, you throw a Living Saint on it, in which case they have the power of the Living Saint. You can only take 1. Now, you can also take a single Carmina Indomitus, which is, of course, always a good thing. The Carmina is a very powerful battleship. Sanctum class Grand Cruiser 0-1, Abbey class Grand Cruiser 0-1, or up to 2 Chalice class battle cruisers. Your standard strike cruisers you can take 1 through 10. You have to have at least 1. Okay? You must have at least 1. You have to take a strike cruiser. I'm sorry, everyone. You just have to. Of course, there's the Priory and the Chapel. Now, when it comes to escorts, the Sisters of Battle don't have access to their own. They have to commission them from the Imperial Navy because it is a means of keeping them somewhat under control. The Imperial Navy's balance on them is basically a monopoly on escorts. You may take any number of escorts in your fleet in squadrons of 2 to 6. Commissioned escorts function as normal Imperial Navy vessels and do not have the benefits of Adeptus Sororitas rules. They can take swords, novas, and falchions. Notice, no cobras. Sorry, guys. Now, and again, your reserves are there. Now, the philosophy of the build of this fleet was to heavily focus on the fire critical hit. And I had to go into the rules of the actual Melta torpedo to try and understand what made them so powerful. And it was really hard to identify at first. Early play testing with Melta torpedoes wasn't that very impressive because if you hit somebody with torpedoes, especially Melta torpedoes, it doesn't convey a blast marker, meaning they can repair fires pretty easily. And if you're not particularly lucky, you may only cause like 1 or 2 fires. Given that somebody could be rolling 8 dice, on average, they're going to repair that. Now, the obvious answer to that is to cause a blast marker if you can. But I had to try and figure out, okay, well, if I can repair this damage, and it doesn't do any additional damage when it hits, because if you read the rules, it doesn't, it just causes fire critical hits. You have to sit there and wonder, why is this thing so limited? And the answer is, 1, all fires are cumulative, which means if you cause 3 fires and you don't repair any of them, it causes 3 damage. And 2, it's persistent. And it is not hard, after, say, round 2, to make sure that a target vessel has a blast marker, making it much harder to repair. So, by giving the Sisters of Battle Melta torpedoes, but relatively undergunning a lot of their ships, they are relying on the fire, and they are heavily relying on the ability to keep blast markers on an enemy base to kill their enemies. And sometimes it works out horribly. You cause 3 fires and someone rolls 3 6s on their repair, basically turning that really solid torpedo hit into nothing. But more often than not, as I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, you absolutely suck at repairing, and you end up taking, in a single round, 3 levels of damage, and then the next round taking 3 more, and then after the next round your ship dies. So fires of that magnitude on your ships are catastrophic. And if you are a fleet that happens to have a cruiser with only 4-up hull, like the rear end of an Orc, or a Orc Hulk, or even a Chaos Hulk, I think they have 4-up armor, anything with lots of hits on a 4-up armor is going to watch those hits melt away very fast over the course of the game, because they simply can't repair the fires fast enough for their weak armor. Against things like Eldar and Necrons, even if they repair on 4s. Against all sorts of other things that normally don't suffer fires, fires are catastrophic to them, especially things like the Eldar, which are very easy to get blast markers on them, making it much harder for them to repair their damage. All I have to do is get you to make a holofield save. Boom! Blast marker on your base, half of your crew cannot do your repairs. So, and guess what? Your armor's 4-up. The likelihood of me getting at least 1 fire on you is really good. Fires on Eldar ships are bad. Really, really, really bad. And yes, if they can't normally get fire critical hit, they still suffer the fire critical hit, and it is still repaired in the normal way. Just so you all know. Melta torpedoes have the capacity to be more damaging than a lot of things, but like all weapons, they require a certain level of skill to use, and the Sisters of Battle fleet, by design, like the Space Marine fleet, is meant to be more of a finesse fleet. You have to use them intelligently. You have a lot of options in this fleet. Don't get me wrong. You have a lot of ways to play this fleet. It was really meant to be that way. You can play with chalices. You can grab an Abbey or a Sanctum. You can go whole hog, grab the Carmina. You can forego it entirely and swarm things with the Priory of the Chapel. Or you could take a whole bunch of normal escorts. You have a ton of options in this fleet. You also have the chaos element of the Living Saint. I really wanted the Living Saints somehow in this fleet, but I also love the unpredictable nature of Living Saints and anything involving the Emperor or the Warp, because sometimes you just don't get the blessing that you want, but when you do get it, you really appreciate it. And there's something very special about dropping a warp rift right on the enemy's battleship. And then you hit him with a bunch of fire critical hits from your assault boats, and suddenly making that warp translation is a lot harder than they thought it was. So it's all about differing layers of tactics. It's all about differing layers of opportunity. And the Sisters of Battle has a, a lot of swing value for opportunity, fun, and catastrophic failure, which is what all of Battlefleet Gothic ultimately is built on. Anyway, that is the first video of 3 that I am going to make about the Book of the Void 1. This is a living document. I do edit things and change things, specifically the background sections and the lore sections, because I'm a terrible writer and I have to go back and re-edit my stuff all the time. But thankfully, Griftifer is here to help me get everything set up and established in a decent amount of time. Griftifer, you're amazing. Thank you for everything that you've done, and thank you for sticking with me through thick and thin. You're awesome. And thank you all so much for watching this video. I'll see you all again in the next one. Bye-bye.